Amanda.
And I'm Mel.
And this is the Road Back Home podcast. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Road Back Home podcast. I'm delighted to be here. How about you, Mel?
I am very happy to be here. In fact, I can't imagine being anywhere else at this moment in time.
So, today we are talking about beyond personality, how we can find freedom from the stories we tell ourselves. And I found this fabulous quote, and it's from Virginia Woolf. And it says, rigid, the skeleton of habit alone upholds the human frame. So, the skeleton of habit. So, very much the habit of, in this particular case, the habit of personality. So, there is I have a meditation, and I can share this for those of you who are paid subscribers. You have access to, let's say the content beneath the paywall. And I will put this here. I have a meditation, and I call it the Eunice meditation, Younness. But I learned it from a man whose name was Eunice, Younis. But it is a kind of a guided meditation down through the layers of identity, to show you how you are not these things that you so strongly identify with. And one of the things that we so strongly identify with is our personality. But our personality is a construct. We are not born with our personality. It's something that develops over time, and therefore you are not your personality, just like you are not your thoughts. So the chances are that you've probably heard the idea before that you are not your thoughts and you are not your thinking. And maybe you've even gotten to a point where you have learned how to separate a little bit from your thoughts. So you might have an experience where you're kind of like freaking yourself out somehow with a thought, and then you'll be able to say to yourself, oh, that's just a thought. Do you know? So the same is true for personality. So if you capture your personality in the driving seat doing its thing, well, then you can say, oh, that's just, that's just my personality. In other words, it's a habit of being. This is not who I am. It is the habit of my identity, who I believe I am.
Right.
So we're gonna dive down beneath that in the hopes that it will give you a little bit more freedom from the habits, let's say, that are going to habit, as habits do, but that you are more than that thing.
The habits that habitat within us.
There you go. So this is an invitation to see yourself as an observer and a manager of that which is your personality. So understanding personality as a construct. Basically what a construct means is that it is something that has been constructed. It is something that has come into form somehow. It's not something integral that just exists as it is. And a personality is a cluster of patterns. It is just patterns and ways that we navigate the social world, as opposed to being any kind of an absolute representation of who you are as a human being. So there are two kind of schools of thought, let's say, that are informing my understanding of personality. And those two schools are the Enneagram, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then the other school is internal family systems, which is quite popular at the moment. It's been around for a very long time, but it is a way of understanding ourselves in terms of all of the aspects of our personality, as opposed to blending with any one aspect of the personality. And so these are two schools of thought that will help me, let's say, navigate this conversation today. So a personality can create a barrier to your growth and your experience as a human being when and if you become overly identified with your personality. So, for example, I am an Enneagram 4. Now, the process of discovering your Enneagram type is a journey. It isn't a definite science. It's not an exact science. you can, and of course, it relies on your own relationship with self and your own self-awareness. So imagine the Enneagram as an orange, right? So it is a whole thing. And that is wholeness, right? So we exist as a whole, but over time, what ends up happening is that we kind of like become segments. So the wholeness ends up being fragmented into, like you would in an orange, you'd see segments. And so imagine that there are 9 segments in an orange, anywhere from 1 to 9, and they are the 9 different personality types. Now, it sounds like a very simplified system, but although there are only 9 sub-personality types, there are what's called subtypes, there are tri-types. So this goes really deep as opposed to going wide. And you can go very deep with the Enneagram, but we're going to keep it on the surface a little bit. I've discovered that I am an Enneagram 4, and every Enneagram type has a nickname. The Enneagram 4 usually is nicknamed the artist, right? And so, which is very apt for me because I have kind of like gravitated towards certain behavioral traits, strengths, and abilities that allow me to be, kind of like move through the world as an artist. But if I become over-identified with that, well, then I am becoming over-identified with things such as moodiness, such as sensitivity, all of those things. They are just aspects of the experience that I have as somebody who leads with that kind of personality, but they do not represent the whole of who I am. A type 2 is kind of known as the helper. And so they have personality, let's say social instincts that make them gravitate towards people and support and very much act in a very mothering, nurturing kind of way. And they may become overly identified with being the helper or whatever and number 3 will be the achiever. And so it's just each of these types have a specific trajectory, let's say a specific profile that is literally just personality. And your personality, of course, is such a forward-facing, social-facing construct that it feels like it is the whole of who we are, but it's not. I resisted this for a long time because I was like, oh, I don't want to be pigeonholed. You can't put me in a box. I felt like it was a system that was going to, constrain me, which is a very Enneagram 4 response to it, by the way. The Enneagram 4 is the whole like, you can't define me. But what they say about the Enneagram is it doesn't exist to put you in a box. It exists to help you out of the box you're already in. Each personality type has its own blind spots, it has its own hang-ups, it has its own insecurities. And when you learn to work with this, it actually gives a lot of context to a lot of your, let's say, private experience of life. And it allows you then to, like, for example, if for every personality type that falls down a well, there is a different strategy that they need to employ to get out of that well. So me as an Enneagram 4, the Enneagram 7's route out of this well is not going to work for me. I need to take the Enneagram 4's journey out of this well. And so because this is a field of study, and if you become familiar with the Enneagram, you can learn what those trajectories are. You can learn what the, prescribed inner work might be to help you get beyond the limitations of your own particular personality. So, and then in terms of internal family systems, it kind of is, it's the same kind of concept in that imagine that a bus. Imagine this like bingo bus for all the world on the road. And whoever is driving the bus is kind of going to take its own, it is going to be responsible for how the bus gets there. And you might be down the back. You might be identifying as the one in the passenger seat, not enjoying the ride and relating to the bus driver as if they're a separate entity for you. But what we discover through internal family systems is that actually you are the bus. And all the passengers on the bus are aspects of you. So you are the reckless driver just as much as you are the nervous passenger, just as much as you are the kid smoking down the back, just as much as you are, whatever, the tourist who's on the wrong bus. All of these aspects are you. if you don't hold space for all of these aspects, you might be overly identifying with one of those aspects, and therefore that is coloring the entire experience that you're having on the journey. So it kind of works the same way in that it's allowing you to understand yourself in a much deeper and more complex way, and to get past the ways that you are pinning yourself or pigeonholing yourself as the nervous one or the reckless one or the arty one or the sensitive one or the whatever the one. So the 9 types, each type, like I said, has its basic fears, desires, and growth paths. What do you think so far, Mel? Are you with me, or?
I was going to say, I'm just going to unmute. I'm here just in case our video fails and we're just doing audio. Yeah, I mean, I've always said to you, I've been interested in this whole concept. So, and I love a good analogy. So I think, where, you might think you'd be nervous to be pigeonholed into something, the awareness of this is the total opposite. That it can help you not be pigeonholed, because you are not just one thing, but rather, like you said, every passenger on the bus. So I am here and I am listening and I'm absorbing.
Yeah. So if you kind of like have yourself pegged as the anxious one, you're kind of limiting yourself and your experience to, like, if you're not the anxious one, who am I? If I'm not anxious, who am I? Is kind of what happens. Or if you have yourself down as the helper, well, the minute you're in a situation where either your help is not wanted or welcome, or there is nobody to help, or you are the one in need of help, that's going to be a difficult space for you to be in, because you've overly identified as being the helper. So this is how it helps us open up to, just having a more expansive repertoire, I suppose, in terms of like how we belong in community. Because remember, again, personality is our social identity. It's our social aspect. It's basically a strategy for getting through life. The other thing as well is that because there are 9 types, there are 3 centers of, you might say, home, right? Centers. So there are 3 types in each of the 3 centers. So type 8, 9, and 1 live in the gut center. Types 2, 3, and 4 live in the heart center. And types 5, 6, and 7 live in the mind center. How this kind of works out is that let's say 5, 6, and 7, those types who live in the mind center, will probably struggle more with anxiety type experiences of life, because the mind is where they're trying to make sense of the world. They keep going back to the mind, right? So type 5, for example, one of their biggest fears is never knowing enough, right? So they think that what's missing for them is information.
Ah, yes.
Get me? Type 6 then have a kind of a, do I know enough? Do I not know enough? What is enough? Like, so there's this kind of like, they never really know. They don't have a sense of security. So there's an anxiety about what's where I should be. And then 7 has an anxiety about, like, am I living enough? Like, is it, is the experience? So they're all type anxiety type when it goes wrong, for example, or when they are in lacking awareness.
Mhm.
So for 5, 6, and 7, the anxiety types, their default space is usually fear. It nearly always comes back to fear. So they're nearly always reacting to fear or trying to outrun fear. And it's a fear of something. 2, 3, and 4, our reaction or our default state is some kind of shame. So shame will be the root experience of their personality. It's kind of a shamed identity. We try and outrun or overcome our shame in different ways. 2 tries to outcome the shame by being useful. 3 tries to outrun the shame by being successful. And 4 tries to outrun the shame by being unique.
And Amanda, is it that specific for each person? Have you, because let's think of astrology, right? Some people are true to their astrological sign Is it more specific than that, or can you be a little bit of each Enneagram?
Yes, you can be a little bit of each. So everybody is the whole. So we are all 9 types, right?
Mm,
But it's almost like, so imagine the person, have you ever seen the people who go to the gym who only work the upper body and then neglect the legs? Do you know that kind of
I
way?
can't say I
You'll see it
have,
in
but I'm sure
memes.
it happens. Yes. Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'd see, yeah, you'd kind of see it in memes or in cartoons where they're just working out the upper part of the body and neglecting this other part of the body. And so it's kind of the same thing. So it's whatever type is most successful for you, whatever strategy is somehow most successful for you is the one that you're going to develop the most.
Right.
So type 4 for me is the most successful strategy for me. So it is the one that I developed the most. But over time, you might see aspects, especially your wings. So as a 4, I will see aspects of 5 and 3 a lot because
Hmm.
they're your border countries as
Right.
such. But you also have a primary type in each of the centers. So everyone has a primary heart type, everyone has a primary mind type, and everyone has a primary gut type. And by the way, the gut, I forgot to mention, the gut, at the root of the gut instincts it's usually anger. 8 is dealing with their anger through expression. 9 is doing it through avoidance, and 1 is doing through perfection. Right? Are they that specific? They can be, but like I said, there's aspects of all. So while I am a 4, in the heart center, I would have more of a 7, and in the gut center, I would be more of a 1. So I have this kind of like artistic, sensitive type who is 7 is afraid of suffering, and obsessed with novelty. And 1 is, I find safety through perfection, right?
I
So you
I'm
will,
a f- I'm very impressed with your knowledge. Like, you have studied the shit out of this.
I've studied the shit out of this only because it is the only thing that helped me overcome the pervasive sense of shame in my life. Up until I
Wow.
discovered Enneagram, I was trying to get rid of shame.
Mm,
I was trying to live without it, right? So change that over to fear. Up until then, I think that the solution to the problem of anxiety in my life is ridding myself of the home
hmm.
base that is fear, right?
Right.
Eliminating fear from my life or eliminating anger from my life, right? So what I know now is that shame is almost like a default thing that happens when, here's what they say, your personality is what shows up when you don't. That's what they say,
Mm.
right? So it's kind of like autopilot.
So when you're
And
not
another way that
making an effort to bring your personality out.
yeah, when you're not making an effort to be something beyond your personality. So for example, when anything happens in my life, like let's just, and because I'm going to take something very, very innocent. Like if I said something awkward, like the other day, I was talking to a friend of mine who has changed their pronouns and just got a new haircut and changed their identity, like their physical identity. And as I was walking beside them, I was like, "You look great, loving the new look. You got it going on," I said. And then I said, "You got it going on, girl."
Yeah.
And then I just, and then I did the whole, like I said, ugh, and we had a laugh about it because it keeps happening. So as I'm
Yeah.
learning, but what's happening to me as I am in that encounter, as we're walking up, even though I know it's safe, even I know it's okay, even though I know it's not a problem, and we're now laughing about it, internally, I'm having a shame reaction to that, right? Because my personality just does that. So as we are walking, I know now to turn to that personality and to just tolerate the fact that I am having a shame reaction, because of course I am, because that's my personality and that's what it does. So
So
up
it's an
until I did
acceptance.
this work, it's an acceptance, and I kind of accept that shame is always going to come to the party, just like the stray cat always comes to the door, even though I don't want it there. It just keeps showing up. It's just there.
Mhm.
And it doesn't even need me to feed it. It could be showing up because there's plenty of mice in the back garden. Who knows why the cat keeps showing, or it keeps showing up because there is a cat here who, is probably giving out pheromones. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter whether or not I'm feeding this stray cat. It keeps showing up whether I like it or not. And you can think about fear or anger or shame as those same emotions. You don't have to get rid of them. You don't have to figure out why they're here. Once you know that it's a default of your personality, you can be like, oh, there's that shame feeling again.
Wow. So
Right?
it's
So this is,
really like a massive acceptance.
yeah, exactly. And it is normalizing of that anxiety or that fear as just being part of the personality you have. So do you know on like the David Attenborough programs or any kind of like Blue Planet or anything like that, you know the way you always see the image of the shark, like footage of the shark, and it always has those two parasitic fish that are swimming right beneath its belly?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know them?
I do.
That's kind of what you're talking about. So imagine the shark is the personality and the two parasitic fish are the emotional defaults or the behavioral defaults that come with being that shark.
Yeah. So,
Right?
I mean, I'm always, here as layman Mel, so what I'm hearing is that rather than attempt to eliminate something that we have been living with, forever, we are now using Enneagram to accept the fact that this is our disposition, that it will always be there, that it will always show up. But rather than chase it away, rather than see it as a negative, we accept that it's there. We welcome it and say, thanks for showing up again, whether I liked it or not. And we move on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
with a forgiveness rather than reprimanding ourselves and self-deprecating ourselves.
Yeah. And thinking that a peaceful existence is the absence of this thing. It's not. We can have a peaceful existence even with let's say the hangovers, or whatever, of the pitfalls of the kind of personalities that we possess. This is all about awareness. So the more that you develop an awareness around this, because here's the other thing, is that each personality's type's basic fear or basic emotional state is here to teach us something about the deficits, characteristically speaking, deficits of character, that if we build them, we become more and more whole. So we start to lean into the other, we just kind of start to expand out. So again, it's this idea of this isn't about pigeonholing. This is about helping you get out of the box that you're already in. And so that you're not relying on control to feel safe. So if I was to stay in unawareness, and if I was to resist any kind of awareness around this being a personality, and for anybody who does this, anybody who overly identifies with the personality and the defaults of their personality, end up having to use control as a means to feel peaceful and safe. And when you use control as a means to remain peaceful and safe, your world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until one day you're not leaving the house, for fear of walking into somebody who's going to give you anxiety, is the story you'll tell yourself.
Wow.
Yeah. So here's the other thing. I know that I'm giving out a lot of information here, and it might sound like, oh, Jesus, I need a degree in this shit in order to understand it. The goal is not for you to become a student of this. I've become a student of it because I love this shit. But what you can do is you can at least embark on a journey of identifying, and it's only this is a self-identifying process. Nobody can come along and say, oh, you're a 7. They can help you. So me as a coach, I can help you. I can kind of facilitate your journey on discovering your own personality type, but it is a self-identifying process. You are the one who decides what personality type most fits for you. And then once we get into the personality typing that you might mostly identify with, you can then start to take your cues from the work that has been done over centuries, by the way. This is not even centuries, this is millennia old. This system, let's say, it comes from like it predates Christianity. It very much is, what would you say, it's an amalgamation of a lot of different systems, some of which are kind of like astrology or something like that, but we don't need to know all of that, other than this has been around for a very, very long time. So let's say going to the 4, let's say, because I'm a 4, right? The sensitive, withdrawn type, expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, and temperamental, right? Now, when I first read that, I can't tell you the shame that was triggered in me, because I had all of these things down as terrible things to be, right?
Mhm.
Sensitive, withdrawn, dramatic, self-absorbed, and temperamental. I was like, oh my God. And of course, being a 4, the shame experience for me made me not want to be a 4.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
some ways, I want.
Yeah.
Do you know
Sorry.
what
Do
I
you know what
mean?
I tell you what it's reminded me of? You know, when you're on the cusp of an astrological sign and you
Yeah.
could identify as Aquarian or Piscean. And remember, they used to have them in the newspapers years ago, when you'd run to that section of the paper and you'd read it, and you would choose the one that suited you better. You'd choose the one that was more
Yeah.
positive about. You'd be like, one of them would say, you need to apologize for something you did this week, and, make a bigger effort in life. And the other one would say, you bring light to the world and so much joy. I'm a Pisces today, you know. So it's reminding
Yeah.
me of that.
Yeah, exactly. So the basic fear of an Enneagram 4 is that they have no personal significance. They have no identity. Like, I'm just a nobody, right? And the basic desire is to find themselves, is to be this, to know themselves deeply and to be a significant person in the world. Now, instantly, I can see how that applies to me, in that I can, like, one of my biggest hang-ups, or my biggest Achilles heel, is comparison. So I can walk into a room and instantly look around to see who is the most significant person in this room. And then I will make myself feel bad in relation to that person. That's one of the things. That's how I know my personality is in control. And it doesn't matter how much of awareness you have, you will catch your personality doing this all the time. It still happens to me every day. So every personality type will have key motivations that drives their behavior, I suppose. And the podcast that I was about to mention, it's called Typology. And he's the man, his name is Ian Cron. He is an Enneagram 4. He's a musician. I think he's a pastor. I don't know if he's a pastor, but he's some kind of spiritual position as well in his community. And he's the one who says your personality is what shows up when you don't. And I've learned an awful lot just listening to his podcast. So the podcast is called Typology, and if you go, it's a website as well, and I think he has playlists on there. So let's just say you did identify, or you had a suspicion, you're like, I think I might be a 2. You can go to that podcast and you can listen to all the 2 episodes. Now, here's the thing though. Here's the thing. Go on, what? Yeah, I
No,
seen your face light up there.
I'm excited that there's a breakdown.
Oh, there is, yeah, and you can learn a lot about them from this guy. There's also lots of books, but I absolutely love how he does it. Now, here's the funny thing about the different personality types as well. So the Enneagram 4, being so self-absorbed, right, very interested in myself kind of a thing. I will go to the Typology podcast or any kind of Enneagram book and instantly go to chapter 4. I'm not interested in any of the other types. I just want to know about me, right? But here's the interesting thing. The helper, number 2, she will be the last person she'll type, because the helper will get onto Enneagram and then be like, I wonder what type my husband is. I wonder what type my is. And the Enneagram 2 will not look themselves up. The Enneagram 2 will instantly try and figure out what they're, the person they're trying to help, the person they want to be most useful to. They will try and figure out their personality type and then embark on a course of study about them, right? So all the different motivations. So an 8, and I'm just using examples. These are not necessarily accurate. Don't hold me to these. But let's just say an 8 would go, and they will learn. They will be interested in the Enneagram to see how can they dominate. What can I know about the other types that will put me in a position of most power? Now, these
Oh,
are the
wow.
unhealed, unrecovered types. You know, the Enneagram 1, might be like, well, tell me how to do my type perfectly. So each of us will come to the learning infused with our own motivations that are unconscious biases that belong
Wow.
to personality. Okay. Now, you can be moving in, you can be going in one of two directions. You can either be moving in the direction of health, as in like self-awareness and acceptance and working with what you are discovering about yourself and kind of like moving towards what is uncomfortable, knowing that it is just uncomfortable for your personality, but ultimately good for your humanity. Or you can go in the direction of going completely unconscious and allowing your personality to completely take over. And that's where you see personality disorders happening. So you have a healthy level. You have your personality type at its best. So for me, a personality of Enneagram 4 at my best, profoundly creative, an ability to express what's personal and also universal, possibly through art, inspired by the world, able to transform my experiences into something valuable, reflective, creative, right? Self-awareness, introspection, all of this stuff, right? When I'm average, I have this kind of like romantic orientation to life. It's very selective. I might create beautiful aesthetic environments and, engage in fantasy and, I'm really involved with my feelings, like just trying to keep my feelings a certain way and quite obsessed with my feelings. My personality type is quite obsessed with feelings, as if feelings are the only thing that matter, and as if feelings as well are the ultimate indicator of what's true and what's real. But in a very unhealthy level, this is angry with myself, depressed, alienated. This personality type turns in on itself and becomes very self-attacking, right? The sense of shame becomes an actual shamed identity. Like there's something wrong with me, and you become kind of tormented. So, the way this is where you hear the stereotypes, such as, the tormented artist, that is a personality running the show, right? And personality is just ego. It's just literally, it's kind of sad because it's almost like if the personality is left to its own devices, it is a very alienating experience because it's like as if, I'm the only, like it all is down to me. There's one aspect of me, like it's all down to that. It's all down to my performance in the world. It's all down to the degree to which I am successful socially, as opposed to understanding yourself as a human being first, So how we know, so here's another thing, and this is where what the Eunice meditation helps you understand is that like at some point, the way like identity, let's say culturally speaking, I identify as Irish, and the way then sometimes people might be like, especially people who wouldn't maybe know the accent, and they'd be like, oh, you're English. Do you know that little you get where you're like, no.
Yeah.
Or if you're in a non-English speaking country and you're speaking English, there's times when I've wanted to wear a badge to be like, no, I'm Irish. Just because I'm
Really?
speaking English, don't just think that I'm English. Yeah, I have been in places where I'm like, I hope nobody, confuses me just because I'm speaking English. For an English person, I'm Irish. I'm speaking English, but I'm Irish.
So is
So
that
do you see how
is that you're proud of your cultural identity? What is that?
That's identifying as Irish, right? So a real Irish identity. It's like I would never describe myself as European, would you?
Probably not, no.
Yeah. Or me living here on the border of Clare and Tipperary, if I say to someone, and if I am in Killaloo and I accidentally call it Tipperary, the people of Clare will be
Tipperary.
like, "Excuse me, what?" Tipperary. Well, but you know that's what it means by like identifying
Yeah.
with a specific aspect of you. But what this or identifying as somebody who drives a Mercedes. What happens when you lose your car or lose your home?
Mhm.
Identity
Yeah,
crisis. But at the end of the day, you are still you. Go on.
I have felt that way with haircuts. I have felt that
Yes.
way. Like I want to sit in that salon and I want to say to Shawnee, I want to say, give me a bob. And he has often said, Mel, you're going to call me the next day and you're going to kill me for doing that because there is so much identity attached to hair, to, anything, I suppose, aesthetically
Mm.
for us. It's like,
Image.
buying new makeup and feeling like, we're going to be a new person and have a new wardrobe. I only had that laugh with Mum yesterday. We came out of Sephora and we genuinely thought that we were, going to transform our identities. But yeah, that grounding in identity is very important to us.
Yes. So yeah, that's exactly it. We can over-identify with image, which is why it can be really painful to go through some kind of a weight-related crisis, like when your weight changes. It's like as if that's all I am. Like if I'm not, or the hair, or somebody who loses their hair for whatever reason. They've identified on this basis. So this is an invitation, this meditation, to help you see how, even if you are so identified with your physical presentation in the world, but even if you ended up having to have a foot amputated or something like that, you are still you. Even if you lose your body, even if you lose your hair, even if you lose your voice, you are still you. And so it's an invitation to contemplate, well then who am I? Like where, so it is the layers of identity. Personality is just one of those identities,
Wow.
you know, and you'll see it a lot with dementia. That is an aspect of life. That is an area of life that robs a person of their personality. Who they used to be disappears, and yet they still exist.
Yeah.
So it really gets down to the heart of existence,
Mhm.
and that you can exist as a person even when you are separated from that which you have identified so strongly with all your
Yeah.
life.
It's like a naked existence.
It is. And you see this with sobriety as well. Like, who am I if I'm not the party girl? Who am I if I'm not hungover?
Fucking a very
Who am
lucky
I if I'm
person.
not? Yeah. But
But
that
yeah.
kind of way, like it was like I still only recently came across somebody who's, that was their entire shtick for the whole day. I was like, how are you today? Oh, I'm dying. Blah, blah, blah,
Oh
blah,
my.
blah. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, and I used to do that. I used to wear that like a badge of honor. And it's almost like, well, who am I on the day after Paddy's Day if I don't have a war story?
Mm.
You know? Anyway, we're getting, I hope I'm not
No,
like
listen,
confusing anybody here or, yeah.
it's a lot of information, but this is a very educational topic. This has, like, in order for anyone who's listening who's never heard of it, or anyone who has mildly heard of it to understand it more, you've got to go into the depths of what it is. I like that you said though that it's something that any of us can participate in and understand without needing a degree in it. And if I'm not mistaken, I remember you at one point sending me a quiz that I could take to at least get started on where I might fall, within the nine options or choices or personalities. Is that something that you are going to share in the notes?
Yeah, I can share that. I will do, like I said, for over on our Substack, I give resources along with and prompts and things like that. So yeah, I can absolutely give some guidance in helping you figure out your Enneagram type. And again, it is really just to help you. And specifically, what made me specifically choose this topic today to bring it back to reality is that if you are somebody who is going through a hard time struggling with anxiety or whatever it is you're struggling with, this is a way, not out of it, but this is a way around it. This is a way of understanding that the anxiety you're feeling is not problematic in terms of its very existence. The anxiety you're feeling is probably just one of these parasitic fish that follow your personality type around. And once you become proficient at separating yourself from this personality type and realizing that the reason I feel shame is because I have a personality that when it doesn't know what else to do, it just goes over to shame because that's what motivates me to fix things, which is a form of control to make me feel safe again. Whereas I can actually learn to live with the experience of shame coexisting with there not actually being anything wrong. Like my experience with my friend the other day, I misgendered and I was able to both have the lighthearted, it's not a big problem experience, as well as the personality, the oh my God, I'm such an asshole, I can't get anything right, shamed personality at the same time, and not to be driven, demented, or motivated by the shame thing. Because here's what would have happened if I had have not known to separate from the shame. I would have done, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm such an idiot. Oh God, am I ever going to get this? Blah, blah, blah. And then I'm making them uncomfortable. Because now I'm making a big deal out of, and I am now invoking them to have to caretake me. Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
suddenly,
Yes. So that's a big one for me. And it's something that I've had to learn in my line of work because I deal with a lot of identity changes with the kids and lots of different pronouns and, them trying to figure out who they are. And what I have been taught, from, let's say, the millennial generation who kind of grew up more with this than I did, was that you never apologize when you get someone's pronoun wrong, because it can trigger them to tell you it's okay, right? So I might say, oh, I'm so sorry I misgendered you. And naturally, especially a child would say, oh, that's okay, don't worry about it. And, I've been told at least that them saying that then has them walking away going, but it's not really okay. So that you say things like, I realize what I did there, I'll do better next time. Or you just correct yourself right there and then in the moment, rather than apologize for it and leave them in an awkward predicament of, telling you that, no, it's good. It's a tricky one because I know it's very controversial as well, but it's the world we live in, and it's certainly the business that I live in. So I do try hard not to apologize, but rather course correct in the moment.
Yeah. And it can be the same as well for grief, So how many of us put our foot in it? You can literally just put your foot in it with another human being. And if you do that, the emotionally mature thing to do is to recognize your own internal experience of that, whether it is fear, because now, so if it's a 5, 6, or 7, so for me, a 2, 3, or 4 might have a shame response, and we might try and chase that shame out either by apologizing profusely or by, taking out the credentials. That's another one where we'll flash the resume and be like, well, here's all the ways I'm getting it right, Or, but so in other words, you're reacting to your emotional experience of the moment instead of being emotionally mature, holding your own internalized response to it because your personality is dying a death because it is ultimately ego, and the ego hates to do anything wrong or be seen as wrong. And you are not burdening another person with the emotional caretaking of a personality running riot within you.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a huge point.
Yeah. So that's why I'm kind of bringing this to the table, is to help people understand that this is part of the emotional work. This is part of the inner work, is like learning how to manage and be a good steward of the personality type that you have, which is like a kid. The personality type that you have it just needs a bit of parenting from the self. So jumping back over into internal family systems, the seat of consciousness is self. And self is almost like this neutral observer who loves all the children equally, right? All the kids on the bus equally, and isn't looking at, so the good girl might be looking at the boy on the bus. So let's just say the good girl up the front of the bus is probably like having judgments about the bad boy down the back of the bus, or the bad guy down the back of the bus looking up and being like, swat. And so all the parts, they're not getting along because they're seeing each other through the lenses of their own identities. So internally speaking, so for example, let's just say, bring it back to a real example, the good dieter in me, right? Skinny Amanda might like just fucking hate fat Amanda, for whatever reason. And fat Amanda hates fucking skinny Amanda or whatever. But they are both the same person on the inside. Or, like it might even be A student Amanda hates, I don't give a shit about this Amanda, hates the rebel Amanda, or whatever it is. They're at odds with each other and they're not able to get along. Whereas the seat of consciousness, the self, the mature self, can see that all of these children and aspects of you are valuable, and they all have their own fears, and they all have their own protection mechanisms, and they all have their own immaturities that are causing ultimately suffering for them. And that's kind of what the Enneagram is helping you do as well, is helping you develop an observer attitude within yourself so that you can work with these different aspects of you that are just underdeveloped or overdeveloped. In the case of the perfectionistic good girl, that's an overdeveloped sense of responsibility. And sometimes that needs to be pulled back in. And sometimes it's an underdeveloped sense of responsibility who's doing all the spending and the eating and the drinking and all the things, acting like as if there are no consequences at all, without judging either of them as being better or worse than the other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Back to the acceptance.
Yes. Awareness and acceptance and compassion.
All the things.
Yeah. So any questions?
Well, my only question was what you're going to drop in the notes, and, how people can learn more about it. I've already written down the podcast that you referred to earlier. I love the idea of, just exploring this a little bit more. And I really just want to remind the listener, especially if you are living in Ireland, that we have a live podcast coming up on April 3rd, which I am flying home from Boston for. And I'm so excited for that. I think ticket sales are going pretty good, right?
They are, yeah, they're going really well. And every day I'm talking to people who are, they're getting buddies together. So there's people coming with their friends, and I'm excited about it. So that is the introduction, I should say, to personality. And like I said, the meditation will be there that will help you contemplate, just consider, like, who am I without this thing that I have convinced myself is a necessary part of my experience? Whether that is, a paycheck, whether that is a, jeans size, whether that is like how many women have I spoke to recently who have had mastectomies? Like, who am I without this? Like, it is like, this is work that life is going to teach us how to do. Like, we have to learn how to live either with the fears that we have or without the fears that we have. We have to learn to live with the problems we have and without them. There's nothing like getting rid of a problem to make some people, freak out. And now I need a new problem to work with. One of the things for me in sobriety is that I have never, ever been afraid I will drink if things get really bad. But where I do fear is when things go well. When I am feeling good about myself. Because as we know, safety is what has kept me sober for a very long time. And now that I'm doing the deeper emotional work, I see how, the better I feel, the more I can't rely on safety to keep me sober.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much for tuning in, listeners. And again, subscribers to the Substack, you will find everything that you need will go straight to your inbox. If you're not subscribed, just go to the show notes and click the link that we send you there. You can be a free subscriber, which will send the episodes straight to your inbox. Paid subscribers get extra. My Substack is where I write. It's also where I post the podcasts. But every article that I post, everything I post, comes with journal prompts, comes with resources, and those who are paid members get access to all of those things. And we are very grateful for listening. We have been in the top 10 all week, by the way.
Whoop, whoop.
For a whole week, the top 10 of the podcast charts in Ireland, episode wise, and in our specific category, which is self-improvement and also education. And yeah, that's what I have to share for today. I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to say. Oh yes, share an episode with a friend if you feel like you're getting value from this podcast. We would love for you to share with your friends.
And I would also highly encourage, if you haven't seen our podcast that we did before this one with our brother Bren, and it's also available as a video format too, to check that out, and you will get to know another member of our family as well. And I think Bren shared that on his YouTube channel, and it has something like 10,000 views or something crazy like that. So we appreciate you, listener, and we look forward to engaging with you more, and we'll talk to you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone.